Right now, or maybe just a few hours ago, you were sitting in your living room, the television was mumbling in the background, your phone was probably in your hand, and somewhere on the floor, or curled up on the very edge of the couch, taking up way more space than anatomically necessary, was your dog, or your cat. Let us just say it is a dog for this moment. It is deeply, heavily asleep. Suddenly, an ear twitches, then a paw kicks out, just a little bit, pushing against the empty air. Then all four paws start moving in this weird, jerky rhythm, like a low-battery wind-up toy trying to run across the carpet. The breathing changes, getting fast and shallow, and then comes the sound. A tiny, high-pitched, completely muffled whimper, a ghost bark from a closed mouth. You smile. You look at whoever is in the room with you, or maybe just smile to yourself, and you say the exact same thing every single human being has said since the dawn of domestication. You say, "Aw, he is chasing rabbits." It is a cute thought. It is a deeply comforting, familiar thought. But I want you to freeze that moment. Stop the tape right there. Look at that sleeping animal and really think about what you are casually assuming when you say those words out loud. But here is a question nobody actually asks, because the answer seems too obvious. What does it actually mean for a dog to chase a rabbit in its sleep? Not as in, does the brain show electrical activity? Obviously, yes, the neurons are firing, the lungs are working, the blood is pumping. We are not talking about basic biology. We are talking about experience. If that animal is chasing a rabbit, it means that inside that furry head, right at this exact moment, there is a whole simulated universe. There is a grassy field, there is a rabbit, and most importantly, there is an I. There is a version of your dog running through that mental field, experiencing the thrill of the chase, feeling the phantom wind, believing completely that the world it is seeing is real. What if we are wrong, and there is nothing in there? What if it is just random noise, random electrical static firing off into muscles, and the dog is basically an empty house with the lights flickering on and off? But what if we are right? What if someone is genuinely home? And if they are home, how far down the tree of life does that private cinema go? Does a bird dream of flying? Does a fish dream of the current? Does a spider dream of the web? We buy them birthday cakes, we talk to them like toddlers, we hold literal funerals for goldfish in the backyard. Seriously, people genuinely do this. Yet we have absolutely no idea what it is like to actually be them when the lights go out. And this is the rabbit hole we are going down today. Buckle up, because this is about to get incredibly weird, and the evidence for what is happening in the dark genuinely melts your brain. Let us start at the very beginning. What does it even mean to prove that someone else is dreaming when they cannot wake up and tell you about it? Let us start with the most obvious thing. For a very long time, science looked at that twitching dog on the couch and said, no, that is just random nervous system discharge. A reflex, a sneeze of the brain. To prove there was an actual narrative, a story happening inside, we had to figure out how to look behind the curtain. Back in 1959, a brilliant and slightly unorthodox French neuroscientist named Michel Jouvet was trying to understand the mechanics of sleep. Jouvet was the man who essentially mapped out what we now call rapid eye movement sleep, or REM sleep, in animals, and he noticed something fascinating. When you go into REM sleep, the phase where human beings have their most vivid, cinematic, chaotic dreams, your brain does something incredibly smart. It paralyzes you. A tiny cluster of cells in your brainstem sends a signal down your spinal cord that cuts off the connection to your muscles. It is called REM atonia. It is the reason why, when you dream about fighting a bear or running away from a falling building, you do not leap out of your actual bed and crash through your actual bedroom window. Your brain locks your body in a biochemical straitjacket so you can safely hallucinate. Jouvet wondered, what happens if you take that straitjacket off? He worked with felines. He went into the brains of cats and carefully disabled that tiny, specific cluster of cells in the brainstem responsible for the paralysis, leaving the rest of the brain completely, perfectly intact. When the cats recovered, they went about their days normally. They ate, they purred, they washed themselves, they went to sleep. They cycled through deep, quiet sleep just fine. But then they hit REM sleep, the dream phase. And because the chemical lock was gone, the dream bled out into the real world. The sleeping cats stood up. Their eyes were completely closed. Their brainwaves showed they were dead asleep. But they began to stalk across the laboratory floor. They would crouch down low, their tails twitching, staring at an empty corner of the room. They would pounce on invisible mice. They would bat at the air, bite down on absolutely nothing, and sometimes even arch their backs and hiss at unseen threats. They were entirely unconscious, yet they were playing out highly specific, incredibly detailed behavioral sequences. They were not just twitching randomly, they were hunting, they were fighting, they were living out their days in a phantom world that only they could see. Yes, exactly that. It was not a reflex. It was a perfectly choreographed script. And Jouvet's work proved that during REM sleep, the mammalian brain is not resting. It is furiously active, simulating reality. So, okay, mammals dream about what mammals do. A cat dreams of stalking, a dog dreams of chasing. That makes sense. It is expected. So here is where it gets interesting. You will say, fine, they act out survival instincts. Hunting, fleeing, basic biological imperatives. That does not mean they have complex memories or a sense of place. It is just a primal screensaver. Okay, then explain what happened in the year 2001 at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. A neuroscientist named Matthew Wilson wanted to know if animals actually replay specific memories, specific moments from their own lives, in their sleep. He did not use cats, he used rats. Now, inside your brain, and inside a rat's brain, there is a structure called the hippocampus, which is critical for memory and navigation. Inside the hippocampus, there are highly specialized neurons called place cells. Imagine your brain has a built-in GPS system. As you walk through a room, specific place cells fire to tell you exactly where you are. I am at the door. Pop. I am by the window. Pop. I am at the desk. Pop. Wilson and his team hooked up microscopic electrodes to the individual place cells in the brains of rats. Then, they put the rats in a circular maze and let them run around looking for food. As a rat ran the maze, the scientists listened to the brain. They literally recorded the audio of the neurons firing. It sounds like a Geiger counter, a rhythmic popping. As the rat passed corner A, a specific cell fired. Pop! Corner B, another cell. Pop, pop! The scientists mapped the exact sequence of the firing cells. They knew the precise melody the brain played when the rat was running that specific track. Then, the rat got tired, curled up in a corner, and went to sleep. The scientists kept the monitors on. The rat hit deep sleep, and then it hit REM sleep. And suddenly, the monitors lit up. The speakers in the laboratory started crackling. Pop, 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 pop. It was the exact same sequence. It was the exact same melody. The rat's brain was firing the exact same place cells in the exact same order as when it was running the maze earlier that day. But it gets so much crazier than that. The scientists could look at the data on the screen and say, right now, in its dream, the rat is running down the left corridor. Right now, the rat has stopped at the intersection. Right now, the rat is running toward the food. Honestly, I get stuck on this fact every single time I think about it. They did not just prove that rats dream, they literally read the rat's mind. They decoded the dream as it was happening. The rat was not just having random flashes of light in its head, it was re-experiencing its own autobiography. It was walking back through its own past. Let me throw you something even wilder. You could argue that running a maze is still just spatial memory. It is navigation. It is just plotting a map. What about something higher? What about practicing a skill? What about something that borders on art? If you want to find that, you have to leave the mammals behind entirely. You have to look at the birds. Down at the University of Chicago, researchers Amish Dave and Daniel Margoliash were studying the zebra finch. The zebra finch is a tiny, beautiful little bird, and it does something remarkable. It learns a highly complex song from its father, and it spends its whole early life practicing that song, refining it, getting the notes perfectly right. Singing for a finch is everything. It is identity, it is territory, it is romance. The researchers monitored the brains of these birds while they were awake and singing. They found a specific region of the brain where the neurons fire in a very precise, rapid-fire pattern that matches the exact notes of the song. It is like watching fingers play a piano on a brain scan. A beautiful, complicated cascade of electrical music. Then the lights in the lab go out. The finch tucks its head under its wing. It falls fast asleep. It makes absolutely no sound. The room is dead quiet. But inside the bird's brain, the piano starts playing. The exact same neurons start firing, in the exact same sequence, at the exact same tempo. The bird is asleep, fully unconscious, and it is rehearsing its song in its dreams. And the researchers noticed something unbelievable. The replay in the dream was not always a perfect copy of what the bird did during the day. Sometimes the brain would vary the tempo. It would slightly alter the sequence. The sleeping bird was not just replaying a tape, it was improvising. It was practicing. It was trying out new variations of its art in the safe, quiet theatre of its own mind, so it could sing it better when the sun came up. Read that again. Well, hear it again, that last line. A bird is practicing music in its dreams. They are dreaming in song. Okay, that is settled. Mammals dream, birds dream. We know that mammals and birds are warm-blooded, highly active creatures. They have complex social lives. So maybe dreaming is a modern luxury. Maybe it only evolved relatively recently in the grand scheme of things, a perk of being a fast-moving, high-energy animal. Now forget everything I just said, because this is where the story takes a sharp, deep plunge into the ancient world. For a long time, the consensus was that cold-blooded animals, reptiles and amphibians, do not experience REM sleep. Their brains are too ancient, too simple. They just power down like a cheap laptop. They rest, but they do not dream. In 2016, a neuroscientist named Gilles Laurent at the Max Planck Institute was studying the bearded dragon, a lizard, a very ancient, scaly, cold-blooded lizard. They had set up monitors to measure the brain activity of these lizards, honestly, mostly just to get some baseline data on reptilian resting states. They were not looking for dreams. Nobody looks for dreams in a lizard. But as they watched the sleeping dragons, the data started doing something impossible. The brainwaves would drop into a slow, quiet rhythm. And then, suddenly, they would spike. High-frequency activity. The eyes under the scaly lids began to twitch rapidly, the exact neurosignature of REM sleep. The dragon would stay in this dream state for about a minute, then drop back into deep sleep. Then, a few minutes later, the dream state returned. Over and over, a rhythm of dreams. When they traced the evolutionary tree, the implications of this hit like a freight train. Mammals, birds, and reptiles all share a common ancestor, a creature called an amniote that lived roughly 350 million years ago, before the dinosaurs, before the continents looked anything like they do today, before flowers even existed on planet Earth. If mammals dream, and birds dream, and lizards dream, it means the mechanism for dreaming was likely present in that ancient ancestor. It means that 350 million years ago, in the dark, swampy forests of a primordial Earth, long before the first human being ever struck a piece of flint to make a fire, the animals were already dreaming. The night was already a theater. Dreaming is not some modern psychological luxury. It is an ancient, foundational architecture of life on this planet. And you are probably thinking, wow, 350 million years. That is the bottom of the well. We have found the root. But here is the thing, we have not. Because there is an entirely different branch of life that left our family tree long before that ancient lizard. A branch of life so distant from us that they might as well be aliens. The cephalopods. The octopuses and the cuttlefish. An octopus does not have a brain like ours. Most of its neurons are spread out through its arms. It is an invertebrate. Its ancestors split from ours over 500 million years ago. If you want to know what it is like to meet an alien intelligence, you do not look at the stars, you look in the ocean. A few years ago, marine biologists, and subsequently millions of people watching a public broadcasting documentary, observed something that broke the internet and broke the scientific consensus simultaneously. They were filming an octopus named Heidi while she slept in her tank. An octopus's skin is covered in millions of tiny pigment sacs called chromatophores. They use them to change color and texture instantly to camouflage themselves. They turn pale to look like sand. They turn dark and spiky to look like coral. They flash black and white to threaten a predator. It is a direct visual display of their nervous system. Heidi was fast asleep, hanging upside down in her tank. Her eyes were tightly shut, and her skin began to put on a spectacular, chaotic show. First, she was completely pale white, the color of a relaxed, hidden octopus. Then, suddenly, half of her body flashed dark brown, while the other half stayed light. Then a wave of deep, mottled yellow and orange rippled across her entire body. Then she turned a dark, angry red, the exact color they turn when they are startled or aggressive. And then she went pale again. The marine biologist watching her noted that this was not random static. The sequence of colors matched exactly what an octopus does when it leaves the ocean floor, sees a crab, drops down onto the crab, catches it, and then realizes it has to hide so it does not get eaten itself. Heidi was dreaming about hunting a crab. This feels both creepy and somehow beautiful to me. We are talking about a creature without a spine, a creature that tastes with its arms and has blue copper-based blood, a creature separated from us by 500 million years of evolution. And yet, when the lights go out, it retreats into an internal world. It watches a movie of its own past. Nature invented dreaming twice, at least twice, completely independently. Whatever the problem is with having a complex, conscious mind, dreaming seems to be the universal solution. But here is the part we do not like to talk about. Here is where the tone has to shift, because if you follow this logic all the way down, you hit a truth that is incredibly heavy. And now I have to tell you the other side of this beautiful, magical night theater. This is where it stops being a cute infographic about sleeping animals. If an animal has the neurological hardware to remember a space, to replay a sequence of events, to vividly re-experience the past in its sleep, it does not just replay the good things. We marvel at the rat replaying the maze because it is a fun puzzle. Matthew Wilson's rats were running for chocolate chips and treats. It was a good day. But what happens if you put a rat in a maze and instead of a treat, you give it a mild electric shock? What happens if the maze is terrifying? The memory consolidation mechanism of the hippocampus does not care if the memory is happy. Its job is to process survival data, and trauma is the highest priority survival data there is. If an animal can dream of the chase, it can absolutely dream of the terror. It can have nightmares. Scientists have observed animals exhibiting all the classic signs of sleep terrors. Waking up thrashing, heart rates spiking, stress hormones flooding their systems while entirely unconscious. And when you realize that they are genuinely reliving their days in their sleep, you have to look at how we treat them, and the realization hits you like a stone in the stomach. Think about the sheer scale we have built for animals. Around 90 billion land animals are raised and slaughtered globally every single year in factory farms. They live in gestation crates where they cannot turn around. They live in overcrowded, windowless sheds. Think about the shelter dog that spent 3 years locked in a concrete run, surrounded by the deafening noise of 100 other panicked dogs. Think about the captive orca swimming in endless, maddening circles in a concrete pool for decades. We like to think that sleep is an escape for them, a mercy, a brief window where they get to power down and not be in the cage anymore. But if their brains work the way Jouvet and Wilson and the others have proven they do, sleep is not an escape at all. When that shelter dog falls asleep, it does not dream of open fields it has never seen. It dreams of the concrete. It dreams of the noise. When the factory farm animal closes its eyes, its brain fires the exact same spatial sequences of that tiny, miserable crate. They rehearse the trauma. They are trapped in the cage during the day, and then they are trapped inside the simulation of the cage at night. Their own minds force them to walk back through the very misery they just survived. Sit with that for a second. The ability to dream is the ability to suffer twice, once in the flesh and once in the memory. The very thing that makes them complex, feeling, experiencing creatures, the very thing that gives them an inner cinema, is exactly what makes their exploitation so agonizing. We are not treating biological machines poorly. We are breaking minds that are capable of reflecting on their own breaking. Sleep is the most vulnerable state a conscious creature can enter, and for millions of them, the nightmare is just a perfect replica of the waking world we built for them. And yet, despite the weight of that, despite the darkness of what that implies, there is something we must take away from this that completely reframes how we look at life on Earth. The honest answer is, we do not know exactly what it feels like to be them. Science can describe the mechanism, it can record the pops of the neurons, it can map the chromatophores flashing on the skin of an octopus, but it cannot crawl inside the experience itself. We will never know if the dog chasing the rabbit in its sleep knows it is a dog, or if the finch understands the beauty of the song, or if the octopus feels the cold of the phantom water. The private flavor of their consciousness is locked away behind a door we can never open. But we know the lights are on. We know someone is home, and that changes everything. We used to look at the animal kingdom as a series of wind-up toys reacting blindly to stimuli. Descartes, the great philosopher, literally argued that animals were complex automatons without souls, incapable of true feeling. Well, thanks, philosopher, but that, in my view, is one of the most epically wrong takes in the history of human thought. What the science of sleep tells us is that we are not the sole owners of an inner life. We are not a lonely spark of consciousness in a dead, robotic universe. The world is absolutely humming with internal experience. From the living room floor to the canopy of the jungle to the pitch-black depths of the ocean floor, billions and billions of minds are constantly taking in the world, trying to make sense of it, storing it away, and replaying it in the dark. Sleep is the great equalizer. It is the cost of having a complex mind. To navigate this confusing, overwhelming, beautiful world, a brain eventually has to shut out the light, close the eyes, and sort through the files. Whether you are paying a mortgage, chasing a rabbit, rehearsing a melody, or hunting a crab, the burden of being alive requires a retreat into the theater of dreams. We share the night. We share the vulnerability of closing our eyes and hoping the world is still there when we open them. So let us go back. It is the same living room. The television is still mumbling, the phone is still in your hand, and the dog is still on the couch. Suddenly, the ear twitches. The paws start to kick against the air, the breathing gets shallow, and you hear that tiny, muffled ghost bark. It is the exact same scene you have watched 100 times before, but now you know what is actually happening behind those closed eyes. You know that you are not just looking at a reflex, you are watching a 350 million-year-old echo. You are standing at the edge of another universe, a private world constructed entirely of memory and electricity, where someone who loves you very much is currently running through the tall grass. They are not just alive, they are living. If you have got a dog or a cat or a highly opinionated bearded dragon, go scratch behind their ear right now, just gently so you don't wake them if they are busy. And tell me in the comments, do you think someone is looking back at you in there? What is the strangest, most human thing you have seen them do when they thought nobody was looking, or when they were entirely asleep? I genuinely read these because the stories you share are always wilder than the science. And if you like looking at this completely ordinary everyday world and suddenly seeing the vast, strange, ancient abyss hiding right beneath the surface, hit subscribe and turn on the notifications. Join the people who want to understand exactly what it is we are all doing here. Take care of yourselves, take care of the creatures that share your home, and sleep well.